So Kim is going to start with introductions when you are meeting or introduced to a person who's blind or visually impaired.
Hi, so I just wanted to say briefly that I am totally blind. I have no light perception. So people ask me, do I see black? What do I see? I say, well, I have never seen anything at all, including light. So just simply, I see nothing. I don't know if I see black because I don't know what black is. So I see nothing. I was able to accomplish, a lot in my life. I have a master's degree and doctorate from KU. My master's is in German. My doctorate is in education. And I worked at nonprofit organizations, various nonprofits for about 20 years. And then now I have my own business. And I work as a Library of Congress certified Braille proofreader and Braille instructor. So this is my dog Kiwi. It's my guide dog Kiwi, who is attempting to interfere with everything going on right now. But anyway, so that's the first thing is that I just wanted to let you know that there are blind people who do all different kinds of things and who are very capable and have all kinds of jobs, from engineers to baristas to lawyers to just all kinds of things. So if there's a career out there, usually there is a blind person who is doing it or who has done it. So that's the first thing I wanted to say to you. Secondly, when we start to get into etiquette, I think sometimes people are so intimidated when they see someone who's blind that they just freeze. I mean, you just absolutely don't know what to do. I can't think of a single one of you that would be in that category, but there are people out there. And so, the first thing that I want to say to you is that when you meet someone who's blind, let's start going over points of etiquette. A lot of times you can see the person who is blind, but they can't see you. So you could be sitting in a room or standing there, and the person who's blind will never know that you're there if you don't identify yourself. So it's always good just to say, hey, my name's Jim or Jane or whatever. And, nice to meet you, or can I be of help to you? Or, is this your first time at this bus stop? Or, something to make conversation just like you would anyone else. But do let the person know that you're there. So that would be the first thing that I would say. Also let the person know, especially when you're in a crowded room, you're in a room full of people. Like I'm in a Sunday school class, adult Sunday school, with about 40 other people. And when they start talking, I'm turning to the person next to me and saying, who's speaking now? Who's speaking now? Who is that? Because I don't know who it is. There are 40 different voices, and everyone expects you to know theirs. There's 40 different voices. And so, and then she'll say, well, David Smith is speaking now, or whatever. It's so nice if the person could say, okay, this is David Smith, and then go on with your question or your comment. That way the person doesn't have to guess. You can imagine, do you remember the old days of the phone? Some of you still remember the old telephones. And did you ever pick up the receiver and someone just started talking and you'd think, who is that? Who is that? That's what I go through every day. I don't know who it is. And the person is talking. And so it's so simple to say, hi, Kim, it's Beverly, so that I know who's speaking. It's just so important when you can't see, so that you know who is talking to you. The other thing is, when you first meet someone who's blind and you've never met them before, there's the big dilemma, especially since COVID started. I'll put my hand out and nobody shakes my hand. Or I won't put my hand out and they'll have their hand out for me to shake and I can't see it. So handshaking is just a very awkward thing. If the blind person puts their hand out, try to always be sure to shake their hand, or to just say, I prefer not to shake, but thank you. Something so they're not just sticking their hand out there. Or if you have your hand out there and they don't shake your hand, just put it back without saying anything and kind of making the situation awkward, because handshaking is very hard. You go to church on Sunday and they'll say, everybody shake hands. And I'm like, oh no, here we go. That's just so hard for me in a social situation. So that's something that I always want to go through. I want to cover some other points too, but I want to stop for a moment and see if anyone has insights, questions, anything like that. So let me open the floor for a minute. And it's quiet.
So one other thing that I would add, just having worked with Kim for many years now, would be to describe relevant visual aspects of whatever's going on in the room. For example, if somebody is passing something around, or if there's a Zoom and there's other people that are attending virtually, if you're in person, just things that the sighted people would know and consider as part of that meeting or situation, to let other people know, like to tell Kim, oh, we are here in person, here's who's here, and we also have these people on Zoom. We have this item, and it just helps so that everybody is more involved and it's more inclusive. And again, as Kim said, that she's not feeling awkward or, trying to just catch up with something that we just didn't think to explain.
Hey, Kim, this is Jim.
Hi,
I do have a little question back to, and this, as I thought about, might seem a little silly, but you described the situation in a room where there are several people and someone starts to speak and you say, well, that's Dave talking. But in many situations, the conversation changes from person to person to person. At what point is it overkill to just keep intervening and saying, oh, now it's Bob, now it's Sue, now it's Judy, and to extend a little bit, at what point is there too much help, too much offering?
You know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. And I thought of that. I think that there's an extreme on both ends. Gosh, it would be nice if you could tell every time who a person is, but I think that, and I try not to have to ask, for help in that direction if I can help it. But I think if a person goes for, let's say, 5 minutes and they're the same person speaking, then it's good just to say something, because it's the whole time I'm in a crowd with, like, that's why I don't do parties a lot. There's 5 different people and they're all interchanging and speaking, and you think, who's that? But I guess I would say go on as usual and don't identify yourself every time you turn around, because that would be awkward. But please just understand if a blind person says, I've been talking to you, but I have to confess that I don't know your voice, because a lot of times I'll stand there listening to someone and all of a sudden I'll think, I'm going to be had if I keep pretending I know who this is, because something's going to come out. I'm going to say the wrong thing and they're going to say, well, I don't have a cat, or I don't live in Lawrence, or, then you'll think, wrong person, So eventually I will usually step in and say, there are so many voices and I'm sorry, I just don't remember your voice right now. Could you tell me who you are? So eventually I step in, but yeah, it would be awkward to go the total other way too.
Kim, it's Bev.
Hi, Bev, how you doing?
How are you?
Phone call.
I wanted to ask you about describing things to you. I remember a situation with Susan, and we had had dinner and we were leaving the restaurant and the sunset was absolutely beautiful. And I started to describe it to her, the colors. And I said, what do you think of when I say red? The sky was absolutely red that night. It was just an intense sunset. Would you rather not hear the color described, or do you think, I said, what do you think of when I say it's red? And she said, I think of things that I know are red, like fire engines. Now, I don't really know the fire engine by its color, but I have an idea of what it might be. Anyway, do you think of something when somebody's describing color, or do you not respond to that?
Well, okay, so I want to know it's there, like the sky being red or whatever. I want to know that it's there, but it's not going to mean anything to me. It's like saying to someone who's always been deaf, oh, there's a Beethoven symphony playing right now and it's just gorgeous. Well, if you've never heard, you know, it's really not something that you're going to be able to relate to.
Right.
To the
So
point
it's,
that, yes, I want to know what you're looking at. And I want to know that the sky is red. And of course, I've been told fire engines are red or whatever, but there isn't going to be any memory brought up for me. Now, if you're talking to someone who has seen before, like I have a friend who went blind of a brain tumor when she was 15. And so she will, from the time she was 13 or 14, she will have remembered what a sunset or a sky looks like. And she's going to remember everything,
so
it all depends really on whether you're like, your friend Susan and I are both blind from birth.
right. Yeah.
It doesn't really bring up any connotations for us, but yet we want to know what you're looking at. But it's going to be like, oh yeah, man, I wish I could see that. Okay, life goes on, Whereas if we had seen before, it would have been a whole different story. But I definitely want to know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
The color means nothing to me except for it's
Yeah.
a new. I don't like colors. I've said it a million times. It'll be time to change clothes, and I'll say, "Boy, I just hate colors." And the reason is it's just a nuisance for me. It's like, oh man, I've got to figure out how to pair, write these things down in my wardrobe so I don't wear the wrong thing with the wrong thing. I know I've got black on today, but colors make life very tedious when you've never seen them. So colors are just an inconvenience, but I also know how important they are to sighted people. Oops, that put the room in silence. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
It's hard to know when to be brutally honest and when not to say much. I think I just put it in. So, anyway, I guess, are any other questions before I move on? Anything?
I could just say that I appreciate the honesty. Many of us are muted, which is part of the reason it's so silent.
Okay.
But I'm very appreciating the perspective here. Thank you very much for it.
Yeah,
Sure.
maybe
This is
maybe one
Michael, by
last-
the way.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
thank you.
Back to Jim. Maybe one last question on color that isn't sort of intriguing. Was it helpful sometimes to relate that to a different sense? So looking at that sunset that was described, I would say it's hot.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, that's perfect.
That would have made more sense. But
Yeah.
I was driving and trying to think.
Yeah, but even to say it's red is good, because even though I don't know what red is or what a sunset is, because I've never seen it, I don't know what a sunset is. It's still good to know
Right.
what you're looking at. It's sort of like saying to a deaf person, I'm listening to a concert right now. I'm listening to a piano piece right now. Well, if they've never heard, they can't really relate to what that even means. But, it's good to let them know that what you're doing, what you're appreciating, what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, both good points. I'm loving this.
One of the other things about like introduction and etiquette that Kim and I were talking about earlier is that depending on the person, there are a couple of schools of thought for terminology. And so we have board members and listeners who have said they prefer to say, blind or visually impaired. And then we have another board member who wants us to say visually challenged, for example, and they're kind of from the
two different consumer groups for the blind. There are two of them out there, and they're rivals. So it's not enough that we have blindness as a minority already. We have two different camps of blind people. We have some in the National Federation of the Blind and some in the American Council of the Blind and some in neither group, which is kind of, I'm work with both groups, but I'm really in neither group as far as being really a big participant. So, but they seem to have their different types of thought, and mine is, I'm not going to bite anybody's head off for saying the wrong thing. It's like, then what happens? They don't say anything. So, I would rather have people say something, and, it doesn't, be respectful, but nothing really offends me. I've heard it all and it just doesn't offend me. But you get people that, it's sort of like if you're African American, some people prefer African American, some people prefer Black. And, some people get all upset if you use the wrong term, and it's like, well, what's the correct term? Well, different people are going to think different ways about it. Everyone they all may be Black, but there are different people that prefer different things. And there are people who are going to be middle of the road and say, I don't get offended at anything. It's okay. Just be respectful.
Kim, this is Trish, and I just wanted to thank you and Beth for sort of offering the concept of a continuum, and that folks are individuals, even a part of a community, because I do think that is helpful for us just to remind each other that we are maybe part of different community groups, and that within that there's individuals that have all sorts of different ways of thinking about things. So thank you for sharing that, not only your perspective, but also kind of giving us that breadth to know that there's many other ways of approaching it too. So, and would you recommend that we ask a question about language when, during that introductory period? Is it an acceptable thing to say, what terminology do you use? Or is it better to just kind of do your best?
I kind of think that it's a conversation for the party when you're 5 or 10 minutes in. Like you sat down with a person. Oh, by the way.
Okay.
It's sort of like saying, what are your pronouns when you first meet someone?
Right.
You sort of let them lead that. If it's that important to them, I would expect them to lead.
Okay.
And then maybe when you're 5 or 10 minutes in and you're at the party and you're sitting together, you can say that, but at the introduction, when you're 2 minutes in, probably not.
I love that. Let them lead. Thank you. That was Trish again. That's great.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so that's the one thing. The other thing is that I want to talk a little bit about guide dogs. Some people use white canes and some people use dogs, and it's a personal preference. A lot of times the guide dog gives more freedom, and a lot of times the cane gives more freedom. If you think about going with your dog everywhere, what would you have to think about? Taking it out. You have to think about shedding. You have to think about the rights of other people. There's a lot of things that you'd have to think about when you have your dog with you. So some people prefer the cane and some people prefer the dog. Dogs are more expensive to care for. I mean, just all kinds of things. I happen to have a guide dog. I am on my 5th guide dog, and my last 2 live with me. Marley is going to be 13 in December and is retired and lives with me. She's my yellow lab, and many of you saw her in previous events at Audio Reader. Then I retired and I used my cane, or she retired. I used my cane for a while.
Uh-oh.
And then almost a year ago, because of Kiwi, or something else.
Hi there.
Right.
Sorry. This is Trish. It just froze up for a moment. So the last part that we heard was about Marley retiring.
Okay, I heard Kiwi, and I'm like, yeah, uh-oh is right. Yeah. Okay. So so Kiwi, and when you're on a Zoom call, that's good to be clued in when things like that happen. You can't see it. But so Kiwi is my 5th, and I have her with me. She is about 3 years, she's 3 years old, and she's a little jumpy. Sometimes, especially when you're a new team, there are kinks that you have to work out. Everyone thinks that a guide dog is like what you see on TV, and they're absolutely perfect, and they do everything perfectly, and they make everything perfectly. And then you get near one, and they're like, well, but your guide dog jumped on me. Oh, but your guide dog didn't sit perfectly quietly under the table. Well, you hope they do. You're working on it. You're trying your best, but there's a few things you can do to help. One, when you come up to a blind person with a dog, please don't speak to the dog. You can ask the blind person what the dog's name is, but don't come up and go, oh, hi, doggy. The dog will jump. The dog will get excited and happy and pet me. And so it's not working for the blind person anymore. So I have told people that I work with a lot, and they know this, just to be very, polite and not approach the dog and start saying things like, hi, doggy, how you doing, doggy? you know, this, of course, that's going to set her off. She's just going to jump around and she's not going to look very professional. It's going to be kind of embarrassing and, you know, this, that, and the other. So that's the first thing. Never pet a working guide dog. Now, what do I mean by a working guide dog? A working guide dog has a harness on it. So it has a handle that the blind person can pick up, and the guide dog communicates information through that handle, like, you know, going forward, right, left, straight. It communicates all of that through the handle. So, and if the blind person doesn't know where they're going, either in an unfamiliar area, just say left, right, straight, they may choose to heel their dog and take your arm. Now, there's a whole nother bit about guide dog access. A lot of people prefer that the dog not get in their car, not go to their house or whatever. And it is a little hurtful to the blind person sometimes when you say, I would prefer not to have your dog in my car, because of course the dog is their eyes. You know, it's their crutches, it's their wheelchair, it's how they get around. You know, there are other ways of getting around besides the dog, but if you can take the dog in your car or whatever, it's appreciated, because otherwise the person has to find someone to take care of it while they're gone. You know, they can't get right back home to the dog like you could if you were driving. It's very inconvenient. But if you don't prefer to have the dog in your car or in your home, you're going to need to let the person know that. Or you can also, if you would say your dog's welcome, you know, that's always helpful, because otherwise you have to make the decision, you know, to take your dog or leave your dog. And it's up to the blind person then to say, you know, would you prefer I have my dog or not? Dogs are always welcome. Guide dogs are always welcome in public places. On airlines, we now have to fill out forms thanks to all the problems that the airlines are having with service dogs. You now have to fill out forms to get your dog on, and sometimes those forms are not accessible to the blind to fill out, but they're expected to fill them out anyway. The dog is expected, you know, to have a form if they fly. So anyway, that's but if you can just, you know, I will try everything I can not to have the dog at someone's home. But if I'm staying overnight, it may be something I need to do. But if it does bother you, say something to the person who's blind. Don't just expect them not to bring their dog, because it is their eyes. But, you know, if you do prefer that the dog not be there, you need to say something. And hopefully I try to always say something. You know, I may not like it when I have to leave my dog, but I'll do it. You know, it's just part of it. And sometimes there's places that the dog shouldn't go. The symphony, I went there, and the little tiny spaces where you sit, common sense says you don't take your dog there. So there are places I don't take her. The zoo, no. No. Stuff on the floor. Royal Stadium, no. You don't take your dog there. There's common sense places, but they're allowed everywhere.
Yeah, I would also add, you know, like coordinating several meetings that, you know, Kim attends and her dogs are with her. Like, if you are in that position, to always try to make sure that there is a space for the dog to sit on the floor. And so with Kim, I know that, you know, she wants Kiwi to sit on her left side. And so for our board meetings, I'll make sure that that space is open so that there's room that Kiwi can fit and that she's next to Kim for Kim's safety and for her vision. And it is really hard not to walk in and because she's so cute. But when I first started at Audio Reader, I attended a training, and the trainer said, if you can imagine, if you are like deep in a project at work and you're really concentrating, you've got to get this done on a deadline, and someone comes up to you and they're like, hi, Trish, hi, how are you? How was your day? What are you doing? What are you doing this weekend? What's going on? Like, that's what it's like for the dog. When they have their harness on, they are working, even though it looks like they're just sitting there or laying there, and that, you know, you're being like, you know, we've also had a situation with people that bring emotional support dogs, which is not the same thing as a guide or service dog. And so to just always be mindful that your dog should be on a leash or harness, even if they're your support animal, because it could be a very embarrassing or dangerous situation for a person who is using that dog as a tool to live independently.
And then the other thing is, so what does the dog do? It was so funny. I was at my vet the other day and he's checking Kiwi out and he says she's got a clean bill of health. And he looks at me and he says, what does she do? And I thought, oh my gosh, he takes care of it. I guess they would have no idea.
Mm.
So a lot of what my dog does for me is I like to go on walks by myself, and she allows me to get out and about on my own. And like with a cane, I sometimes won't know for sure if I'm veering across the street. She'll take me from curb to curb. She'll go around obstacles, which frees me up because, with the cane, you're touching it, you're figuring out, how am I going to go around this obstacle? So she frees me up for a lot of that. If there's like at KU one time, my guide dog Tommy and I were approaching an elevator and the shaft was open. And I said, Tommy, forward. Would not go. Tommy, forward. He would not go. And someone came up to me and said, no, the elevator shaft is open. There's nothing there. But that dog had been taught, the dogs are taught intelligent disobedience. And we actually, when I trained in New York, I got home training this time, but when you train in New York with the dog, which I was in residence 4 times, and this is my only one I've not been in residence with, they have you practice on a subway platform, and someone will be there to grab you if something goes wrong. But you stand at the end of that platform with no train ahead of you, and they say, command your dog forward. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? No, command your dog forward, and they will not go. It's intelligent disobedience. So you never know when those situations are going to come up. That is something that your dog does for you that a cane cannot. Going around objects. So even if you don't know where you're going, still, the dog is what I call a professional sighted guide. It knows you know it. You become a team and you know how to get around. But what it looks like you're just walking along with your pet. Why does she need that dog? In some situations, no, you don't need the dog. But in some situations, it's better for you to take the dog, and it's just easier for you to just move around on your own. And Jim and I, Jim has been my sidekick sometimes, or I've been his. and we ride together to events, and I'll go, I'm going to go work this room. And so Jim will man the booth for me wherever we are at Audio Reader, and I will go to the exhibit hall and go with my dog from booth to booth, and I'll just say, excuse me, what's the next booth? And someone will tell me, and I'll just go on my own independently. And what the dog allows me to do then is just to go on my own, go independently. I have that choice anytime that let's say I'm shopping with a friend and I take my dog, and maybe my friend wants to go to Coach and I want to go to Brighton. And so we're in town center, and I'll say, drop me off over here at Brighton and I'll meet you back. It gives you options that you don't have if you don't have the dog. So that's in a nutshell what the dog does for me.
I'm sorry, Kim, this is Trish, and I was going to ask a quick question that just a follow-up to something that you mentioned. You had said that you may choose to heal the dog and to take someone's arm. And could you kind of describe to me what that means and what that would look like for maybe the person that was there with you?
So I'm going to just take the dog's leash in my left hand and put it kind of lower so that the dog doesn't have a lot of wiggle room. And I will have the dog walk at my left side, and I will take someone's arm with my right hand, their left arm with my right hand, and have the person lead me, and the dog will be walking along at my left side.
So
basically you shift the dog into neutral.
Yeah. So Kim has done that with me several times at Audio Reader. And so it's amazing. She can come in and say, Kiwi stairs, Kiwi bathroom, and the dog can lead her there. But if it's busy, if it's crowded, those things, then, she'll put the dog in a heel, and then I'm on the wrong side, but, she'll say, oh, And so then that way I can guide her through. So she would take my arm, even though the dog is there. It's just a more active assistance from a sighted companion that, you know, might be easier for her and the dog to navigate.
I don't know about you, Beth, but how did, when you do that, that harness is a little tight on your back.
It's very tight on the dog's back. Yeah.
I'm thinking on I'm just kidding about the fact that you become, as taking over the guide dog spot.
If folks don't know, Jim's a bit of a kidder.
Yeah.
I should have known that, Jim.
That was Trish interjecting there.
Funny.
I would make one other comment on the dog, Kim. I think I'm right. You gotta remember, this is an intelligent animal. And so one of the things I've noticed is that, as Kim said, not only does that free her to go around an area, but also if it's a place where you're going to be for a couple of hours, the dog is going to learn. You know, Kim can take her, you know, kind of be shown the path of the class goes to the bathroom. The dog will learn. Oh, and so, you know, need to go there. This is how we get there. You don't have to left, right, forward to me anymore. I know where I'm going.
Yeah, especially if we go into a place, like say we were there one year, Marley, when I had her, this is Kiwi's first go around at any of these places. But Marley, we were some places 2 years in a row, like Live Well, Age Well. Last year, she totally knew like where the restrooms were. It was like you started there and boom, she just went the rest of the way. She remembered.
So this rolls right into our next topic, which is like interactions. So after like your introductions have been done, so just general day-to-day interactions. Again, like the bottom line is to just always be respectful. But you know, so guiding, again, I'm on the wrong side, but I was going to show, you can stay seated, Kim, I'll just stand up a little. But so it would be like right above the elbow. And so then she would say, oh, I'm going to take your arm. Or I say, Kim, would you like to take my arm? And so then she would be able to just grab right along here. And so then I want to keep my arm pretty much at a 90-degree angle and to close enough where she doesn't have to like chicken wing her elbow out. And so that way, you know, when we go through, then, you know, I would be helping if it's really crowded. Like we were at a restaurant today and the pathway was pretty narrow.
And I didn't take Kiwi.
Yeah, so I would, you know, kind of put my arm back a little bit so she would know to kind of go behind me instead of parallel with me. And then to kind of describe as we're going through, like, oh, there's, you know, there's a mat here that has a large edge. There's a step up into the booth where we went for lunch. And so that way, but that's like the standard, the appropriate way to guide. You never grab somebody and always ask if they want your assistance, if you can give assistance. If it's a child or someone in a wheelchair, then the height difference, it might not be possible or comfortable for them to take you above your elbow. So they might do like the back of your hands. So you would be standing and they would be, you know, seated or short for a child. If you're in an auditorium style seating where you have to shuffle and all of us are tight and shuffling, then you would also kind of do like the, you know, back of the hands so that you could stay single file to get through. And again, to always announce and explain what's going on and what has changed. You want to talk about food?
Yeah, but before I do that, a lot of times you'll see someone who's blind and they're holding someone's arm and yet they've got their cane out. Like, why is that person using their cane? I wouldn't want to use that. A lot of people don't like the cane. Why would you want to use that thing if you could just grab someone's arm? Well, it's telling me a lot. The cane is telling me about what's in front of me. It's telling me about cracks in the sidewalk, changes in terrain, changes in texture, what the ground sounds like when I tap it, what the echoes are like around me, which tells me, are there buildings? Are there, you know, I'm listening to a whole different soundscape than you are because I'm listening to echoes in my path and other things. So even when I take someone's arm, you know, sometimes the cane really helps because it's telling me what's going on around me. It's giving me more information even than the sighted guide could give me, but it's not like I'm making a choice between one or the other. I'm using both of them at the same time. So, you know, if you see someone with a cane, that's why they've got it out. So, all right, on to food. glorious food. I'm on my perpetual diet right now. Oh, is it hard? Okay. So when there is food in front of someone who's blind, you can imagine if someone placed food in front of you and you're like, what is this? So the first thing that you want to do when you're blind, when I'm out at a restaurant, the waiter or waitress a lot of times will put something in front of me and not say a thing. So the first thing to do is say, hey, John, your water glass is in front of you, to the right. Someone just put a plate of food in front of you. And then go through what's on it. Okay, and you usually do that with a clock. So you don't always have to, but you can. Like your rice is at 6, and your potatoes are at 9, and your chicken is at 12, so that they just kind of have an idea of where things are located. So, and also the other thing is, what do you think? Just take a guess. What do you think one of the worst, awfulest things is when you're out at a restaurant with food?
Having it on your face, egg on your face.
There you go.
This is Trish. I don't know.
Cutting.
Oh, God.
Cutting things up. You can imagine having, I really try to be careful what I order. Today I ordered an enchilada and I thought, oh, good job. That's going to be hard to cut, but it was easy. It ended up being okay. But the worst thing in the world is trying to cut a piece of meat. And you'll see some blind people that try to do it, and they're not real successful. I used to ask the wait staff, would you please cut that up before it comes to the table? But I would get real awkward responses like, what? What do you want me to do? Oh, we can't do that. So I finally stopped asking because all I did was feel awkward. Hardly ever will they agree to help and agree to cut something up. So one thing you might do is, hey, would you want me to cut that up for you? And usually if you offer the suggestion, someone's going to say, oh, yes, please. But you're not going to come out and ask on your own, would you mind cutting that up? Because it's kind of a little embarrassing situation. And, you don't always want to ask, but, usually if you offer, that's another thing that I'm going to get into, nothing to do with food specifically, but if you offer to help, and I think this even goes to sighted people, during a trying time, if you can identify something specific to help with, then your help is more likely to be accepted than if you just say, well, let me know if I can help. If you can say, can I help cut your meat for you? Can I help? Do you need some help crossing that street, or can you handle it on your own? It's more likely to be accepted if you offer a specific thing you can help with.
And Kim, I'm going to ask a quick question. I think that Melinda, did you have a question? And also want to give a heads up. We do, we're getting close to that, our time frame. It's about 2:55 now. And I know one of the things we also talked about at the very beginning is that there's lots of good things that we could share today. And so if we don't get to everything, I would love for us to be able to state the rest of our questions that we have, or the other items that feel like they need to be addressed, so that we can have a part 2, or maybe have another opportunity to share that.
Trish, we just had one more thing actually, and it was,
Okay.
You kind of alluded to it with the food. That I would want you all to tell me, like, if I had food in my teeth, or
I always have egg on my face. This is Trish
Yes,
again. So
right.
there you go.
And so, and Kim has said that too, it's to be discreet and respectful, but to let people, what you would want, treat people how you would want to be treated, be respectful. But so many people get awkward because it's like, oh, well, I don't want to say anything. I know one time we were on a Zoom and her camera fell and it was showing not her face. And so I just texted her and said, hey, lift your camera up about 12 inches or so. Because I would want someone to tell me that if it was, and so like that would kind of be the last piece for just respectful interactions is, treating people how you would want to be treated.
Hey, Melinda.
And hi, Kim. You answered my question. My question was about, you said it was difficult with cutting. And my question was, would you want someone to just say, your companion, to say, can I cut that for you? And you said you would. And so that was that.
Absolutely, yes, I
Excellent.
would. And anything like that, if you see that the person might be a little awkward, you just don't want to have to ask, I like going to the restroom. Hey, I'm heading to the restroom. Do you need to go? Because I know I'm going to have assistance to get there, and I just don't want to inconvenience that other person. So I'm trying not to. But oh, if someone says, you need to go to the restroom, yes, you know. So, any other questions? Anything else?
But just building on Trish's thing, which I thought was very good, the specific, I'm looking for a formula to have in hand. Would it make sense to begin with an if statement? So, if you would like me to cut your, I can do that. Or if you want some help across the street, which basically puts the ball back over and gives a total right of rejection, of saying, no, I'm fine.
That's perfect. That's
Okay, so
perfect.
an if lead is maybe a thing to use.
Yeah, it is. That's great. Yeah.
Uh,
And I don't want people to have so many rules that they don't even want to interact with them because there's just too many rules and I give up. You don't want that either. You want to realize that people are more alike than they are different. And, these are just some guidelines that maybe will be planted in your head when you meet someone, but please don't try to think that all 25 of them are going to come at you at once. And, oh my gosh, I can't think of them all. So I'm giving up. No,
Real quick, this is Nick. I just wanted to back to the language thing. I wasn't sure if it would come up, but mention people first, person first language. And if people aren't familiar with that already, that can be something you can read a little bit more on. Actually found a video. I'll put a video in the chat. And I think Kim's advice of asking how people are, like to be referred to or how to speak about their disability. People first is also just a really good kind of make you examine some of your biases and that show up in your language. Some example like wheelchair user versus wheelchair bound, for example. It's common to say wheelchair bound, and if you think about what you're saying when you say wheelchair bound versus somebody who uses a wheelchair, individuals with disabilities. So, and I personally hate the blind. This idea that the blind is just one chunk of a population is so.
It doesn't even bother me.
Yeah, it doesn't bother you. And there's exceptions to every rule. So your point about asking, and a good exception is deaf with a capital D, which is the deaf community, and that's really interesting because that can even be a family can identify as deaf where just one person is deaf, but everybody uses sign language, so the entire family, even people who do not have any disability or don't have any hard of hearing, I know is another fits into that scheme. So there's rules for and against on both sides, but just reading about people first language can be eye-opening if you've never done that before, and how it speaks to the biases that we might have and are intrinsic in the words. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there.
And I would say, Trish, thanks. You've been sending us chats, and that was a really very, very helpful. That was really nice touch. Thank you. I think what we can probably save that, or I can almost see you printing that out, making a copy and offering it to us. There was, that really preserved a lot of this that'll be helpful.
Thank you. Just that's to share. I was just adding some of the kind of highlights to the conversation into the chat because sometimes it is harder for folks that are trying to work or do multiple things while they're on this, Zoom. So it offers an opportunity to just give a snapshot. And I am recording this, so hopefully we can utilize it as long as everyone's comfortable with that as a tool for folks to have some, a chance to look back at that. And I know Nick added a video as well as a couple of the documents that we've talked about, the courtesy rules of blindness, which is from the National Federation of the Blind, and also another document from, I think, the Chicago Lighthouse. There's just a couple of documents that sort of give some of this as reference to. But we are about our time. I know one thing, first of all, let's all give a round of applause. Thank you. If everyone wants to come off mute and give hand claps, that's okay. They are clapping their hands. Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much, Kim.
Enjoyed it.
And
good.
I also want to say, if there are any other comments on things that they're interested in still hearing more about, Kim had mentioned that she might be willing to reach out to some folks that are that she's in contact with that do dog training. I know Lisa might be interested in that too. But if we would be interested in more information about that, or if there's other topics that you all are interested in, please share those either in the chat or via email. And we're glad to look into those additional resources.
You know, Kim, I would love to hear about the class you teach to people all over the world.
Okay, yeah, I'm a certified Library of Congress certified Braille proofreader, and I also teach Braille lessons through an organization. So I currently have 73 students in addition to my Braille proofreading work. So I've got 29 different projects on the table, all due right now.
Wow. Well, thank you for making time for us, for sure. So much appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, well, I will add that to the list. If there's anything else, I'll just say thank you, everyone. And again, thank you so much, Beth, for being here and for having this opportunity. And thank you again, Kim.
Sure, my pleasure.